Here is everything you need to know, plus my thoughts on Busch Gardens Tampa's newest flat ride, Serengeti Flyer. Unfamiliar. Serengeti Flyer is a swing ride built by S&S called the Screamin Swing, which uses compressed air to swing riders to extreme heights. Now, one thing to note with the Screamin Swing is that because it uses compressed air, each swing feels very controlled. So the ride does use gravity, but each swing doesn't really feel progressively more extreme than the last because of its controlled nature. Now, the next question you're probably wondering is, where is Serengeti Flyer located? Now, Serengeti Flyer is located directly right of Pantopia. Now, if you're wondering where Pantopia is, it's directly in the center of Busch Gardens Tampa. So Serengeti Flyer is located basically in the center of Busch Gardens Tampa. Now, one thing to note with Serengeti Flyer is to reach Serengeti Flyer, you're going to need to head down a fairly narrow path in Nairobi, which is directly south of Pantopia. And one thing to note is that Serengeti Flyer is kind of tucked away into a small area right by the park's Serengeti Plains. That is just one thing to note about Serengeti Flyer's location. It can be a little hard to find. So now let's look at Serengeti Flyer's stats. Now, like I said earlier, the manufacturer of Serengeti Flyer is S&S, and the ride's height is 135 feet. Now, the reason I have an asterisk next to the height and the speed, which is 68 miles per hour, is because Serengeti Flyer has two modes of operation that will be discussed later in the video. So stay tuned. Now, also, another thing to note is Serengeti Flyer's height requirement is 48 inches, which means some pretty young kids will be able to ride this pretty monstrous flat ride, which doesn't surprise me because pretty much all other Screamin Swings built by S&S do have a 48-inch height requirement, but that is one thing to note about the ride. Now, Serengeti Flyer does have pretty high capacity for a flat ride, which is desperately needed for a park like Busch Gardens Tampa that gets pretty darn crowded at times. Now, Serengeti Flyer's capacity is 20 riders per gondola, and that is in 2 rows of 10 riders. And as you can see, riders are seated back to back. Now, each rider is restrained by a lap bar that is connected to the seat with the seatbelt, and there are 2 gondolas that swing in opposite directions. Serengeti Flyer has 2 different operating modes that I've actually never seen before on any other S&S Screamin Swing I have ridden. But the 2 modes are mild, which swings to about 90 degrees and also reaches speeds of about 50 miles per hour and swings up to 100 feet in the air, which those are just me guesstimating considering the stats of other S&S Screamin Swings, but those stats are not confirmed by Busch Gardens Tampa or the ride's manufacturer S&S. Another thing to note about the mild side of Serengeti Flyer is that it operates between the park opening at 10 o'clock to 1:15 in the afternoon. Now, after 1:15, Serengeti Flyer operates in its wild mode. Now, this is where you're going to see the advertised height and speed take full effect. So, with Serengeti Flyer's wild mode, it swings up to 120 degrees, and you can definitely feel that. Like, it doesn't feel like 120 degrees, but you can definitely feel it go beyond 90 degrees. And as I mentioned earlier, it swings up to 135 feet in the air, where you'll be staring straight down at the Serengeti Plains and all the animals. And as I also mentioned earlier, it hits speeds of up to 68 miles per hour, which is pretty fast for this type of flat ride. Now, to sum up my thoughts on Serengeti Flyer, I rode it twice in my last visit to Busch Gardens Tampa, and I think it is a great addition to the park. Now, it is especially a great addition because Falcon's Fury, the park's drop tower, has been closed for maintenance throughout all of 2022 and for the start of 2023. So because of that, Busch Gardens Tampa has been missing a flat ride, and Serengeti Flyer is a great new flat ride for the park. Now, as for the mild mode on Serengeti Flyer, I thought the mild mode to be pretty average. Like, it's exactly what I expected because I'd ridden other S&S Screamin Swings, like, for example, Barnstormer at Dollywood and the Great Barn Swing at Silver Dollar City. It felt nearly identical to those 2 rides. Now, as for the wild mode, it just feels kind of crazy because you keep rising up higher and higher and keep going more and more beyond vertical. So it gets pretty crazy. And especially with the wind in your face, the wind in your face is way stronger on the wild side than the mild side because you're going much faster. So it just creates, I wouldn't say a more intense ride, but just more fun and definitely more thrilling ride. I will admit, like, I am used to these S&S Screamin Swings as I have ridden for them throughout the United States. And the wild mode on Serengeti Flyer definitely got me a bit because I wasn't used to an S&S Screamin Swing that went so high up in the air and so fast. And like I mentioned before, that wind in your face definitely is very refreshing with the Florida heat and is definitely a great added touch with this ride. That is another reason why I think this ride is just pure fun. And I definitely plan on doing it at least once every time I visit Busch Gardens Tampa from now on. This video, I want to thank you for watching, and remember to like and share this video with anybody you know who will be visiting Busch Gardens Tampa in the near future. And also remember to subscribe to Southeastern Thrills, and peace.